Hello and welcome back to the Telcos Drift. For those that I haven't met yet, I am Pablo Tomasi and I'm an independent analyst that are covering, different bits and pieces across the tech space. Now, for this episode, I'm really aiming for like 10 minutes and I want to have a quick chat on satellites and particularly on Starlink because whether we like it or not, when we're thinking about what's happening with satellites, it's pretty much all about Starlink at the moment. So I'm going to try to discuss a little bit why sort of Starlink is such a big deal and what could be the implications for telcos and what could be some broader implication for the market for the future. But before we start, just came to mind. There are a couple of things that I've been learning about the podcast. I had some conversation with some fellow analysts and a couple of people that are surprisingly listening to this. Um, and some of the suggestions like increase the preparation and make sure that you have that sort of long-term goal for the podcast. So I'm still working on that. It's getting there. I've decided I'm going to try to push a little bit more on the sci-fi side of things if I can. Probably starting with some wide off predictions. But that is sort of the direction that eventually would like this to go. I would love to sort of start talking about tech and horror movies, but that really require a very specific niche audience. We'll see if we get there. But anyways, without all this blabbering, let's talk a little bit about satellite and let's talk a little bit about Starlink. So first of all, when you're looking at the company, they have been doing some amazing things, and part of their success has to be with how they have been doing things. And currently, they have 7,800 satellites. I think they have plans for 40,000 something satellites overall. Of course, cost of manufacturing, according to different sources, has decreased over the last few years, and initially apparently, you know like in any big endeavor, very high costs in the thousands, and now bringing it down to a more manageable level. Now, what is really interesting, we all know that's Leo constellation, and there are around 550 kilometers. And the whole constellation, I think that's like, see, this is like a public level of information. It's 450 terabytes of cumulative capacity, which is huge. And that is one of the really interesting things because they keep adding capacity. One of the opportunities that comes with Leo, right? You can add a lot of capacities. Now, another key aspect of Starlink is that this is an integrated company, if you want, as part of SpaceX. So they have the capabilities to launch stuff. They have their own rockets. And when you're such an integrated company, effectively you can design things to best fit with your satellite. So, and with your rocket, sorry. So pretty much, the satellites they are designing are designed in a way that so they can be packed as efficiently as possible on the rockets, which means a rocket can send more satellites in one go into the space. And another thing that a lot of people seems to forget is that Starlink satellites, they have inter-satellite links, and effectively they are creating a mesh network around the globe. And the last thing, again, information from their website, the latencies, median latency in the US is 25 millisecond. Everything needs to be taken with a pinch of salt when we talk about this stuff. And downlink 200 megabit per second median again in the US, which are some really, really good statistics. Now, serving more than 6 million customers, so massive growth, and something that has sort of obliterated anything else that we've seen in space so far. Significantly, they are still working on additional innovation, so third generation SAT and ground station, as well as the Starship rocket, which is supposed to be sort of a giant rocket, bringing a lot of stuff into space. Now, one of the reasons why I wanted to briefly talk about Starlink and satellites is because they recently, SpaceX is splashing 17 billion in cash and stock to buy some of EchoStar spectrum. Now, I'm not going to discuss sort of where is this leaving at EchoStar. You can look at LinkedIn. I made a post about people chopping up EchoStar, but effectively sort of ending the experiment of for the US to wanting to have a fourth player. But more interestingly, alongside this, it filed with the FCC for reportedly 15,000 additional satellites to support direct to device. And the idea is that really with this spectrum and sort of with these developments, they're gonna go after the direct to device side, direct to unmodified device. And this has raised a lot of questions from people of, where is Starlink wants to go. And I have a few considerations on this. The first one is that it's not gonna try to replace the traditional MNO. I cannot see any scenario where Starlink will be happy becoming an MNO. And also, I cannot see any scenario where Starlink will be happy to buy smaller or part or even bigger MNOs, because uh, when you buy that, you buy a lot of legacy. And part of what makes Starlink and SpaceX unique is the lack of that legacy, which is not, sort of slowing it down. It has that ability to look beyond and move faster, because it doesn't need to think about, keeping things in the past and then, reorganize products and all that type of stuff. But significantly, it is changing the dynamics that we see in the market, right? So far, Starlink was partnering with T-Mobile on the T satellite. Now, as part of the new announcement with EchoStar Boost Mobile customers will be able to access D2D via Starlink. So the way that I see is that this becomes a bargaining chip, right? Sort of the threat of additional competition, the threat or providing some service to some of their competitors, and potentially as the exclusivity with T-Mobile, sort of ends, supporting the Verizon and the AT&T of the world. I think that is like the big bargaining chip that Starlink can play, and that allows the company probably to get better deals. Let's not forget that at the end of the day, when you have a lot of satellites that keep spinning Earth, a key priority for you is always to use them as much as you can, not only in the US but then everywhere, because that's how you really make sure that the business model is solid. But I don't see Starlink becoming a traditional player. And again, another reason is that realistically, when do you ever actually use satellite? Like 99% of your life as an average consumer, you are within coverage. Yes, it may be bad coverage, but that coverage will still get priority over connecting to a satellite. And yes, I heard many people saying, "Oh, we're gonna go sort of, in the wilderness countries." That would be like a very good segue. By the way, we sort of 80s horror movies of people leaving and going to the country, wrong turn type of movie and stuff like that. This actually just came to mind. So nice, would have been a nice segue. Anyways, but not that many people love hiking in the middle of nowhere, and not that many people are actually constantly going beyond their usual routine. So I don't see that as enough of a business model for someone to really spend that much money. Now, my view is that Starlink will get like a very niche markets, and that potentially, again, Tesla just get them with smartphones and get them with connectivity wherever they are. That does make sense. Government, of course, big part playing within the government side of things with the defense, but consumer per se getting a Starlink satellite phone or normal phone that goes satellite, I really struggle to see that happening personally. Now, having said that, who knows what billionaires think, so I may be completely off, but we're going to have to wait a little bit. Now, the other thing that is important, so if we're thinking about the timeline, and I remember I had this conversation about private networks for a while, with chipsets coming, and then modules, and then device and testing, blah, blah, blah. When someone says 2 years, 2 years is like the standard time frame that everyone expects for something to develop. But realistically, this is not going to happen in 2 years' time. Like any support for the spectrum for that direct to device requires the chipset and the whole ecosystem of the device to move and make their own strategic choices. This will take a much longer time frame. So even assuming that sort of there wants to be that the sort of MNO like play is not going to be at 2 years. I think for them, for Starlink is much more powerful, being like a, it's kind of a boogeyman, a specter of like, we could do that. Therefore, as long as sort of you provide us alternative of what we want to do, we are not going to enter the market in that particularly way. Now, a couple of additional things. Oh God, time is passing really fast. Why is it changing the game? Like, why Starlink and SpaceX have changed the game? And no other satellite company has done what they've done. And the fact that they are LEO, that it is a LEO company, I think it's a really important element because of the shorter lifespan, they have the ability to refurbish their constellation and update the constellations, make changes to the satellites, evolving them, not only from a software perspective, but from a hardware perspective. And I think that is really making a big difference. I already mentioned that it's vertically integrated. And the other point, which I think plays a role, at least for now, is that this is a first mover advantage, sort of the blue ocean. No one else can do that at the same pace right now. As competition start to sort of filter in, then things are going to be slightly different. So we will see what's going to happen. Now, challenges, trying to wrap up in like 30 seconds. Well, as I mentioned, the ecosystem, that's really a big one. Regulations, you need license. And then again, you need the satellites to be working as much as you can across the globe, because they keep moving. And the other big one that everyone should be wary of is geopolitics. Not everyone will be so happy to be so dependent on sort of a US and a little bit like kind of unpredictable company. So that could limit a little bit what Starlink will be able to do, or maybe the speed at which Starlink is going to be able to execute what it wants. Now, this definitely would require a little bit of a longer call, but I've been traveling quite a bit lately, and being like a one-man band, I realized time is not that much when you're traveling all over the world with your other side of the job. So I think 10 minutes is suffice for now. Will suffice for now. And of course, yeah, very curious to hear your thoughts, and leave the comments. Let me know what you think or not. Am I on the mark with Starlink? Am I off the mark? And is Starlink potentially, and SpaceX, being a whole big long-term prep towards the space economy? Is that the ultimate goal, or is that just sort of another sci-fi novel that we will have to wait and see? Let me know, and have a good day. And hopefully next time I'm gonna have a little bit more time, and should have another guest as well. So keep mixing and matching.